Today, goeiedag, fellow South Africans from a beautifully warm Brisbane. The video I'm attaching to this is very, very interesting. It's Rouche from Suitlanders talking to someone about what is happening in South Africa. Now, in an earlier video, which in fact, I only posted a couple of days ago. I'll link it below. The prediction was that in South Africa there are going to be enclaves, and we're talking about like areas of South Africa where they're going to be huge. It's like a castle. You've got walls all around this area, and racially people will be divided. Now, if you look at the region of Oranje, where it's basically a white population, and there's a huge African population on the outskirts of Oranje who are getting employment from the whites in Oranje. I could see that becoming an enclave. Okay, I could see huge walls around Oranje and that area just being white, with perhaps a certain number of Africans being allowed into the area, but that might be very, very controlled. Which really makes me think back to the 1980s and 1970s. And what I'm talking about here is that in Angola, for example, De Beers have a diamond mine, which they've had for many, many years, okay? And they had this huge fence around the mine so that none of the locals could get in. And they had an airport so people could fly into the mine and they could fly out of the mine. And De Beers were paying the corrupt officials who basically ran Angola millions of dollars to do this. Now, obviously we're talking about a totally different scenario when we talk about a racial enclave in South Africa. But the whole idea of the enclave is not new. Businesses have done it. As I mentioned, De Beers in Angola and in other places too. In Western Africa, there are a number of enclaves where areas with resources are basically just isolated from the population. But what's going to be unique in South Africa, I believe, is that you're going to have these racially based enclaves. And it'll be because the white population has got no choice. As so many people here have said, they have an issue trying to migrate out of the country because of age or because of a number of other factors, maybe family or whatever it is. And that's all understandable. But the situation in South Africa is becoming so untenable for the white population that they've got to look for a plan B. And as I mentioned earlier, that video, which I'm going to link below, where they're talking about enclaves, racially based enclaves, I think that is what's going to happen in South Africa. And if I was in that situation, Oranje's got a problem because it's landlocked. Okay, so you're kind of in the middle of South Africa, which is a problem. I think the perfect place for an enclave would be in some aspect of Cape Town, where you maybe the original area that Jan van Riebeeck came in, where the Bantu and the Nguni tribes have absolutely no claim. They weren't within hundreds of miles of Cape Town. But if, for example, Cape Town became an enclave with big walls and barriers and whatever, and the white population moved into that area with a number of Africans and coloureds who would be there involved in employment and stuff, and let the rest of South Africa just go and destroy itself, because that's what they're going to do. I mean, you got Malema fighting with Zuma, you got tribe fighting against tribe, African tribe fighting against African tribe. I think the only solution for the largely white population is to have this walled off area where you can grow your own crops, you can support your population without the crap that's going on in the rest of the country. Because the whole of South Africa is deteriorating into a complete cesspool. And Oranje as an enclave might succeed, but I think that I do think it's too isolated. I do think that you've got to look at something which has got access to the sea, so you can get boats coming in and boats going out and stuff like that. But look, I'm going to say no more about this because it's an idea that I'm just developing. I will tell you that there's a very, very high chance I'll be on the Sunday night at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, because I'm setting up a new channel. And hey, here's a shout out to Sean. Thank you for the great idea, and I'm working on that right now. Now, getting back to the video that follows, Suitlanders represent about 130,000 white South Africans who are, it's basically a military commando. And obviously they're hugely outnumbered. And, you know, if civil war comes about, I don't know what chance they would have. But I think if the city of Cape Town and the areas around Cape Town, Table Mountain, you know, going around up to maybe where the shanties are, if that was basically just walled off with enough area for farmlands, for growing crops for the population, and just let the rest of the population go and fight it out amongst themselves, because that's what they're going to do. You just have to look what's going on with Zuma and Malema and this BLF. I mean, you know, these are radical political groups that the mainstream media are not mentioning. And that's what the genocide is going to be once they start trying to kill off the white population in South Africa. And that is clearly a strategy. I mean, it's clearly a strategy. Look at what they've done with the farmers. So I'm going to leave it at that. But remember, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, what I'll do is I'll post another video giving you the link, because I can't do it on this channel because of the strike. So I'll be doing it on another channel. But please don't forget to subscribe, because there's a lot of good stuff coming, okay? And I look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday night. Okay, take care.
How did you get to the solution that preparation for civil war is the way to go forward?
Just like you, right-wingers in Sweden, you predict many things that have come true over and over and over again. And people laugh at you, you know. It comes true over and eventually you're nearly mad that people can't see this obvious thing. And it's similar for us. For a long time we've been predicting a crisis in South Africa. Now it's at the point where, for example, our president speaks openly. On the 6th of January 2015, he said at a banquet dinner in Cape Town, all of the problems of South Africa can be traced back to the arrival of whites on the 6th of April 1652. And as a black man said to me, what he means in African idiom, the way we hear what he's saying, is if there were no whites here, there would be no problems in this country. So the solution is to get rid of the whites.
Is this payback for apartheid?
I don't know if it's payback for apartheid. I think that there are, or we Suitlanders, let's say this, under the guidance of our leader, our founder, Gustav Müller, I think we are those people who can see that whether it's payback or not payback, there's a sort of an instinct that's being encouraged by a hidden hand. And now it starts to sound a little bit crazy, hidden hand and secret forces and what have you. But people are being told that if they take from the whites, everything will be okay. Is it just a payback for apartheid? I think there's more to it than that.
So, in your words, why would you say that the black politician in the ANC doesn't listen to the white man's need in this country?
Because it's not in their interest to do so. There is a phenomenon in Africa where it is considered sensible to have 100% of 10 rather than 10% of 1 million. If everything crumbles and there is an elite of people that just own what remains, owns the aid that comes in from Denmark and the support from the United Nations and this kind of thing, then it's okay. This is an African cultural phenomenon, and when I say that, people must be conscious that the term that is used when addressing this did not come from right-wingers. It's a liberal term and an African term. The African big man. One big man in charge of everything. So why would you look after the interests of your rival, these whites, competing centers of power? No, it's not in their interest. People say, but they will never kill the goose that lays the golden egg. This fairy tale. For sure they will kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Because he's laying golden eggs. And because everybody loves this goose. It is difficult to convey these concepts to people who are not familiar with African values and African norms and African culture and African traditions, because it is very typical of Europeans and North Americans to see things only in their own way. They cannot comprehend that other cultures have completely different values.
When did this start? Did it start with the takeover of ANC with Nelson Mandela?
Yes, certainly it did. Prior to that, it was clear that there were some strong globalist forces acting in South Africa. But if you talk about the Africanist aspect of things, then it began when the opportunity was created in 1994. Look, one of the first things that the African National Congress did was a massive arms deal that was supposed to cost $5 billion, and now I think the price is at $55 billion. And the corruption associated with it is unbelievable. Some things were multiplied in price 10 times. And we speak now about Saab Gripen jets,
Yes.
And other companies, but you're Swedish. I'll give you another example. It's not quite the same thing, but it will maybe help people to understand. When I was at university, the ANC, this is prior to the first multiracial democratic elections of 1994, on the universities, the ANC would say, non-racism, non-sexism, non-tribalism. When we're in charge, it's going to be a utopia. In the second ANC cabinet, government cabinet, it was almost 60% from one tribe, Nelson Mandela's people.
And which tribe was that?
The Xhosa people. He, strictly speaking, was not exactly Xhosa. He was from the Abatembu people. But this thing of non-tribalism, as long as it sounds good, we'll say that. But when the time comes and we need to make a government, then we bring in our buddies.
And what do you say to those people that actually fought for equal opportunity in this country?
I think that they did a good thing. I fought for equal opportunity in this country. I'm one of those people who said, if we can all have a place in the sunshine and it can be wonderful, let's do it. Let's try to cooperate. And for many years, I was the, almost you can say, tame white boy who was willing to share knowledge and to help and to do projects for the government, to do what was right. But it turns out that we were worshipping a false idol. It turns out that we were being led by the nose like a cow to be slaughtered, It was, excuse my language, it was all bullshit. We bought into the narrative that was sold to us by the global mainstream media.
And now you have a new president in ANC.
Yes.
Do you see any faith in this new change of leadership?
The Suitlanders is one of the few right-wing organizations in South Africa that is truly right-wing. There are many others who will, on the one hand, they will say, oh, you must not hurt the Afrikaners, farm murders, it's bad. But the new South Africa, you know, we're trying to... Because we are right-wing and we don't apologize for anything, we are able to say the truth in ways that other people are not. There is a new president in Zimbabwe, and we said when he came, this is not a good thing. While everybody was cheering, Mugabe is gone, this is so wonderful. We were the only organization saying this is a bad, bad thing. Similarly, to answer your question, when Cyril Ramaphosa was elected, the Suitlanders was the only organization to say this is not a good thing. He is not the friend of white people. Perhaps he is better than Jacob Zuma's wife, his rival for the presidency. But it's not a good thing. And we were right. Immediately after he was elected, he said we are going to proceed with expropriation of white-owned land without compensation, without giving money. So we are very worried. We believe that he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Lovely accent. He pretends to be a capitalist. But his background is a tragic background. He was a trade unionist, a Marxist trade unionist. He was deployed, as I was told by senior ANC leaders, at the time of Nelson Mandela's funeral, the day before, in fact. He was specifically deployed by the ANC to go and be the great capitalist. Other ANC people were deployed to look after the municipalities. Another guy was sent to be an ambassador. Another guy was sent to learn about mathematics for to become the Minister of Finance. He is an ANC dog on an ANC leash, and white people in South Africa, they cannot see it.
What will the white man's reply be if they impose this politics of land grab without compensation?
It will lead to violence because some white people, I don't say they're right or that they're wrong, I think it's suicidal myself, but some white people, for sure, will resist by violence. They will say, my family owned this farm for 8 or 10 or 12 generations, and you can't have it, end of story. Also, the principle on which the expropriation without compensation is based is nonsense. The first black people, Bantu black people, were met by white people 125 years, after white people arrived in South Africa. The western 40% of South Africa had never been occupied by the Bantu people, who are now claiming land in that region. It took the white, racist, colonialist, evil white people 125 years exactly, and this is recorded. The diaries still exist to this day. They are in the Brenthurst Museum, owned by the Oppenheimer mining family in Johannesburg, just next to Johannesburg General Hospital. They are there, that show the records, and there are many others. It took 125 years.
Were you Boers' colonization?
Yes, our people were colonialists, no different than the way that the Zulus colonized the Xhosas and smashed them to pieces. Remember, in the Mfecane Wars, as all liberal sources, only liberal sources, there are no conservative sources that I quote now, record that in the Mfecane Wars, between 1/3 and 2/3 of the entire population of South Africa was wiped out. That's black and black. So yes, we're colonialists. I suppose maybe it happened also in Scandinavia. Swedes, Danes, Norwegians, Finns, I don't know. Are we innocent? Are we perfect? No. We never made this claim.
What are the preparations that the Suitlanders take to face this threat?
We prepare daily physical, material, goods, vital necessities for civilian non-combatants, so that we can realize a national emergency plan that covers most of South Africa under international law, particularly Protocols 1 and 2 additional to the Geneva Conventions, which make specific provision for identifiable ethnic groups to gather together as non-combatants and to defend themselves as non-combatants. In other words, just to defend a perimeter, not to go out and attack. This is the preparation we make every day, and besides that, we are a Christian organization, very old-fashioned Christianity, very old-fashioned European Protestantism. So we have that aspect as well. It's very important to us. Most people don't understand it. They want to know only about beans and bullets and that kind of thing. But for us, Bible is most important.
And how many members are tied up to the Suitlanders?
We are, for sure, the largest non-state owned, not owned by a government or anything like that, non-state owned civil defense organization in the world, with about 93, almost 94,000 members.
Do you only accept Afrikaners as members?
Any white people. It is an Afrikaner organization by Afrikaners, of Afrikaners, for Afrikaners. But we say that fellow white Christians are our ethnic people, going back thousands of years. They are our people. They are welcome.
This system of you that you're talking to, it needs to take place when you're being attacked on a big scale. How are you dealing with this ordinary daily attacks against farms?
We are not involved in that aspect of things. We are preparing for a civil war in the future. It is true that Suitlanders sometimes makes efforts to help white squatters. It is true that we support some of our members who are farmers as far as farm attacks and this kind of thing is concerned. But our, you can say, mandate, our raison d'etre, our purpose is very narrow. It's to prepare for civil war. We're not seditionists. We don't go around undermining the government saying, oh, don't pay your tax and this kind of thing. We are not insurrectionists. We don't go around saying to people, oh, you must store up explosives, bombs, this kind of thing. Our organization is saturated with spies. You can imagine, in the new South Africa, we're not very popular, you know, white people preparing for a civil war. And yet the government has never been able to prosecute us for even the smallest crime. We obey international law. We obey the protocols additional to the Geneva Conventions. Everything is legal. But we try within the law to prepare legally for one thing, a civil war.
Who do you see as the enemy in this civil war? Will it be tribal or will it be the state against its citizens?
That's a very good question. Our leader, our founder, Gustav Müller, has spoken at length about this thing. Ultimately, the enemy is what David Icke calls the Luciferian consciousness. Ultimately, the enemy is the globalists, the New World Order, Freemasonry, these things that undermine traditional European-derived Christian culture, ultimately. However, in a more immediate sense, we believe that the government and the economic freedom fighters and Black First, Land First, these entities are stirring up blacks against whites. You know, everything would be okay if there were no whites here. Julius Malema, the head of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, said on the 7th of November last year, in 2016, I beg your pardon, I'm not calling for the slaughter of all whites yet. The Prince Regent, that is to say he's the prince, but his father is old, so he acts as the king. The Prince Regent of one of the most important tribes in South Africa said to me, Simon, in English idiom, that could mean many things. In African idiom, it means only one thing. Prepare to slaughter the whites. This is from a great tribal leader who's also a senior African National Congress, ANC person. You know, I think you can understand the point I'm making. It's unbelievable, but it's true.
Do you fear that it will be a white genocide here in South Africa?
There will be a white genocide in South Africa. According to Dr. Gregory Stanton, who's the foremost expert on genocide in the world, he's the acknowledged world leader. He said this is a deliberate thing. He was talking about the violence and the crimes against whites in the suburbs, in the cities, on what we call the small holdings, the miniature farms just outside the cities, and on the big farms. He said, with all my years of experience, and the video exists, it was taken at the Transvaal Landbou Unie TLE in 2012. He said, this is deliberate. There is a deliberate, low-intensity war that is intended to frighten whites off the land, and which will culminate in something big sooner or later. That is our belief. If we are wrong, the whole world can laugh at us. All the liberals can say what a bunch of fools we were. We take a big risk, but we are sure of this. And let me tell you one thing, Jonas. 3 months ago, there was a white protest across the country called Black Monday against violent farm murders, this kind of thing. Yeah? A few days later, the Minister of Defense did an interview in which he said, if whites protest again like that, peaceful, there was no rape, there was no burning down like the black protesters burnt down the Bloemfontein City Hall 5 months ago, burnt it to the ground over wages. There was no destroying buses, setting fire to people's houses, stabbing people in the townships. Peaceful. She said, if whites do that once more, they will cause a civil war in this country, and they will bring a genocide on themselves. All we have to do is protest peacefully once more. It is clear, the threat. The threat is clear. If you continue to find this solidarity, if you continue to stand up for raped babies, 3-year-old, 4-year-old raped babies, 4 men inside a baby this big, genocide is coming to you. So don't believe me, please.
With this demographic challenge that you're facing,
Yes.
and also facing the threat from the state,
Yes.
can you win a civil war?
We don't say that we can win. We are 1 in 12 people in South Africa, 8.5%, of which easily 60% of the white people are liberals. They believe the same nonsense that people believe in Sweden. 1 and 1, it looks like 11. And the newspaper tells me it's 11, so it must be 11. We are a very small minority that knows that 1 + 1 = 2. So we are maybe 3% of the population. Do we stand a chance in a civil war? No, we don't stand a chance. But right now, Suitlanders is an organization of people who believe that it is good to try. It is better die for something that is good than to live for something that is bad in this madness. It is good to cooperate and to stand together to protect women and children and elderly people who can't look after themselves. It's best to do the best that you can. We don't speak the way some people do. If there's a war in South Africa tomorrow, we're going to, F them up and this, that, and that. This is stupid. What we say is we will gather together, we will look after our mothers and our fathers, our sisters, our wives, and our daughters.
What kind of help do you get from overseas?
We recently toured the USA for 6 months, attempting to raise funds, and we've been blessed by those young, especially young, not only, but especially young right-wingers, this growing movement in the USA, wonderful people. So we receive some donations from them. We are a large organization, large membership. We have a fantastic plan. Our shortcoming is financial. So the sort of help that we receive and the sort of help that we need is financial. It's embarrassing for us to ask for money like beggar or like an American televangelist. It's all about the money. It humiliates us, but actually we don't need members. We're the largest in the world. Our plan is the best in the world. Nobody ever said it wasn't the best plan. It's the most advanced. But our weakness is financial.
You're saying that all the aid that you get from overseas are from private initiative. During the struggle that the ANC fought against apartheid, they had a lot of overseas state aid.
Yes.
Why isn't any state overseas aiding you?
Because it would humiliate them. Imagine for 40, 50 years, the Northern Hemisphere has been saying white people, apartheid, bad, all of these things. Now just imagine if they started admitting the rate of rape and murder on the farms, the crimes against whites, the threats where the Minister of Defense is talking openly about a genocide in response to a peaceful protest. Imagine what fools the Swedish government, the American government, the Canadian government, the Scandinavian news media, the Western European news media, the North American news media. Imagine if they started telling the truth. These people who rammed this message down the throat like feeding a goose for pâté foie gras. They rammed this thing down the throats of the Western world for so many years. Just imagine they said, oh dear me, we were wrong. They'll look like fools. They will never tell the truth.
Are they fools?
Or they are liars. We would say that they are liars, that they are part of a plan. But once you start to say these things, people think you're crazy, you know. All I would like to say is, if anybody would like to support us, we have a free starter campaign beginning very soon, a crowdfunding campaign. It is for the purchase of diesel, stockpiles of diesel, which will be located in strategic positions. Please help us. Every $1, every 1 Swedish krona makes a big difference to us. We are begging the world for help. Your money goes to buy radios, dieseline, medicine. We have tremendous preparations. Come and see if you're not sure. Come and look for yourself. Come like Jonas, come to the Orange River, come to Van der Kloof. See, we are doing good things with this money, and we are begging people, please